We begin the Gemara today on Daf Chov Daled, Amud Aleph, the second line down from the top of the Amud. Bish Loimer L'Rish Lakish. We're mamish in the middle of an Indian here. So this is going on the Mishnah. A person makes a Shavuos that he will not eat. So first the Mishnah says, if he ate things that are not Roi Lachile, he eats Ofar, then he's not over on the Shavuos. That's not included in his Shavuos. Then the Mishnah goes on to say, if he eats something which is Asr, like Nevelis, Treifis, and so on, so here there's a Machloikis. Tanakama says that he's going to be Chayiv, and Rab Shimon says that he's Potter. So what's the pshat here? What's the difference between eating Nevelis, Treifis, where over there he's going to be Potter, and in the Seifa, in the case where he eats things that are Asr, that over there there's a Machloikis. So there were two pshatim over here in the Gemara. One pshat was, well, before I get to the two pshatim, at this point the Gemara understands that in the Reisha of the Mishnah, the case is that he didn't specify anything. He just said, I'm not going to eat. So if he eats earth, not edible, it's not included. In the Seif of the Mishnah, the Gemara says it's mefarish. He did specify specifically what it is that he's not going to eat. So Rabbi Yechanan says that this is based on the concept of koilol, Isser koilol. Because he said clearly that I'm not going to eat nevelis and shchutos. He's not going to eat both kosher food and not kosher food. So he said both together, even though regarding the foods that are aser, the shvuah would not take effect, but he included other foods that are kosher, it takes effect. Reish Lakish says that's not the pshat. Over here, the reason why the shvuah takes effect is because the isser that there is of these foods is Mushba v'oimid Mar Sinai, that Isser is on a kazayas. Over here, the Shavuos that he made is an even less than a kazayas. So therefore, your Shavuos now is adding to the Isser that there was before, so it takes effect. Those are the two pshatim in the Mishnah. Okay, now let's see the continuation of the Gemara. The Gemara will ask a few questions here on Rabbi Yechanan's pshat. So as the Gemara, Bishlai Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, we could understand the pshat and the machlokes. Mishum hachi kapata Rab Shimon. We already explained, Reish Lakish explained why the Tanakama says Yechayev, as I just said, because the Isser before is in a Kazayis, and with the Shavuah you add to Aser even less, so it takes effect. But we could also explain why, according to Rab Shimon, he says, no, you would be Potter. Why? Because the Tanya, we learned, Rab Shimon says, regarding all these Surim, Kol Shuhu L'Makis, that by any Isser, even just to eat a Kol Shuhu, you would be Chayev Malkus. You chayev to bring a carbon only if you eat a kazayis. So the isser is even on a kol shuhu. So if he makes a shvuah, you can't say that the shvuah is adding anything. That's why Rab Shimon says you potter for the shvuah. But according to Rabbi Yechanan, my time is Rab Shimon the potter. Why does Rab Shimon say that you potter if there's a concept of isser kailol? And the Gemara now understands that the case is that he said clearly, I'm going to eat nevelis and shchutos. So he included something else that wasn't in the original Isser, so why shouldn't it take effect when you're including more? Answers the Gemara, Midi hu taimeh el mishum Isser kailol. The whole reason why the Tanakama says Yechayev is because the Shavuah includes more, even something which is kosher to eat. But Rab Shimon, the taimeh, the lesle Isser kailol. Rab Shimon does not hold of this concept at all. Doesn't hold of this concept that when you have already an Isser in effect, and now a second Isser comes, that if it includes other things, that the second Isser will take effect. The Tanya, as we learned clearly in Abrayz, Rab Shimon says, a person eats a nevela on Yom Kippur, potter. He'll be potter, which means it was already Asr from before Yom Kippur. And now, when Yom Kippur comes, there's more that's being included in the Isser, because now he has to fast, and he's not allowed to eat any foods. So if you would hold this a kailul, then a second issa would take effect on this nevela. But Rab Shimon says, no, the second issa does not take effect, and therefore you potter. Rashi adds to what the Gemara says. The Gemara says in a scenario of a nevela. How about if it's a behemoth that was alive when Yom Kippur came in, and then it dropped dead on Yom Kippur? It became a nevela on Yom Kippur, so seemingly in such a case, the issa of Yom Kippur should take effect. But Rashi says, no, because when Yom Kippur came in, it was a live behemoth, so then it's Asr because of Eiver Menachai. So it was already Asr from before to eat from this living animal. So on Yom Kippur, the Isra of Yom Kippur will not take effect. Okay, now the Gemara has another question on Rabbi Yechanan. Bishloime l'Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish's pshat in the Mishnah, that the case over here is that he's making a Shavuah, and because he's including in a Shavuah that he's going to not eat. He's not going to eat less than a kazayis. Therefore, the shvuah takes effect. So mishkachas la belav v'hein. The shvuah that he says that he's not going to eat less than a kazayis, this kind of a shvuah could be made in the positive and in the negative. That I will eat and that I will not eat. Right? What this means is, even if this person is specifying clearly that he's going to eat from what's asr already before b'achila, or he says clearly that he's not going to eat from what's asr b'achila, either way his shvuah is going to take effect. Now why is this significant? So this concept of la v'hein, Rashi brings, then the next daf, the Gemara is going to explain the concept by a shvuah, that a shvuah does not take effect unless it's a kind of shvuah that fits what the pasuk says. And the pasuk says, lahara oy lahetiv, that it has to be a shvuah where it's possible to say no and yes, that I will not eat or I will eat. Only then does the shvuah take effect. So here in this case, it's already aser. If it's already aser, seemingly this is not a kind of a shvuah that you could say that I will eat it. You can't make a shvuah that you will eat it if the Torah asks you to eat it. But according to Rish Lakish, you actually could, because the shvuah over here is that he's going to eat less than a kazayis. So that's not awesome in a Torah. Less than a kazayis, he can make a shvuah behain that he would eat it, and he could also make a shvuah that he will not eat it. And it takes effect either way. So therefore, for this shvuah, you would be chayiv. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, how could you make this shvuah in both ways, that he would eat and that he would not eat? To say that the shvuah takes effect in the negative, to say that he will not eat, so that could work, as we explained, because then it's a kailo, because he spelled out clearly nevela and shchuta. So once it takes effect for the shchuta, for what's kosher, it also takes effect for the nevela. But Elohein eichim mishkachas law. But to make a shvuah, and when he specifies clearly, that's what the Gemara is thinking right now, that he specified clearly two things, nevela and shchuta, and that's why it would take effect in the positive, but in the negative, that is, in the lav, that he would not eat. But in the positive, though, to make a shvuah that he will eat, it will not take effect. If a person makes a shvuah on food that is forbidden to eat, even if he's kailul more and says, I'm going to eat nevela and shchuta, it doesn't help when you kailul something else. The shvuah that you're making on what's aser does not take effect, because it's aser for him to eat this. So how is this a shvuah that we could say regarding the nevela that it would take effect? Okay, so the Gemara answers, Elo kiderove. What we have to say is the svara that Rave said. What's the svara that Rave says? So how do we get here to this conclusion? Why are we saying over here that when he's making the shvuah for not to eat the forbidden foods, the case over here is that he was mefarish clearly that these are the forbidden foods that I'm not going to eat. Right? And then we said what it means is he's not going to eat these forbidden foods, and then also he included also shchuta. Why dafka did we get to this pshat of mefarish? Because there was a contradiction before in the Mishnah. When it comes to a person that makes a shvuah not to eat, and he eats afar, he eats not edibles, so then he's potter. Then it says when he makes a shvuah not to eat, and he eats not kosher food, which is also not edible for Yid, so there is chayiv. So what's the difference? So the svara the Gemara is thinking until now is that in the case where he's eating food literally afar that's not edible, it's because he didn't specify. He just said I'm not going to eat. So that doesn't include what's not edible. In the case here where he says that he's not going to eat and he ate from non-kosher food and he's going to be chayiv is because he specified clearly this non-kosher food. And the reason the shvuah takes effect is because he was kailul also kosher foods as well. But now the Gemara says you don't have to say that distinction. You could say that even here, regarding this case that we're talking about, he makes a shvuah not to eat, and he eats from the vela, from not kosher foods, he didn't specify anything. So what's the pshat? So why over here does the shvuah take effect? So the pshat is like Rava said. Rava said, shvuah shaloi oichel va'achal afar. When a person makes a shvuah not to eat, and he eats specifically afar. Afar is something which is physically not edible. Then you're going to be potter for that. Because it's physically not edible, it's not included in the term achila. By contrast, when one makes a shvuah not to eat, even if he doesn't specify anything, he didn't clearly say, I'm not going to eat this non-kosher food, it will include the non-kosher food. For a Yid it's not edible, but physically it is edible, and therefore it will be included in this shvuah. So therefore, you don't have to say the case over here is that he specified that he's not going to eat kosher and non-kosher food. He made a shvuah that he's not going to eat. And it takes effect because it's kailul more. It's kailul the non-kosher food, it's kailul the kosher food. That's why it takes effect. And this is a kind of a shvuah that you can make behain and belav. He can make a shvuah that he will not eat, and he can also make a shvuah that he will eat. even though when he makes the shvua that he will eat, it goes also on the non-kosher food, but it takes effect because he didn't specify that. He says he's going to eat, so it goes on everything. So therefore, that's the case of our Mishnah, where the Tanna Kama holds you'll be chayiv in such a case, and the shvua takes effect. Amar Rav Mari, so Rav Mari says, Afanan nami tanine. We also learned, I'll bring you a raya to this last point here, that when a person makes a shvua not to eat, that term achila includes nevela as well. Even though it's not kosher for a yid, but it physically is fit for eating. Because the Mishnah goes on to say, Kainam ishti nanisli. If a person makes a neder that my wife will not have any hanoah from me, if I ate today. And he did eat today, but what did he eat? He ate non-kosher food. So his wife is going to be asur to him. So what do we see? He ate food that is not kosher food, and it's considered to be achila. We even though it's asur, but it's edible, so it's considered to be achila. But the Gemara says, there's no comparison to what we're talking about. The taich in the Mishnah is kiven de me'ikara achal. He already ate that day. That's what he's saying here in his neder. He's saying that my wife will be asur if I ate today. So he's talking about the past, if he already ate from before. That's when I learned the Mishnah today in the morning, I touched the Mishnah that it meant that if he's going to eat later today. But no, that's not the touch. The Gemara says he already ate before. So since he already ate before this non-kosher food, and then he's making over here this shvuah or this neder to say that his wife would be asur for him if he ate today. So the fact that he ate these foods, that shows that for him, even though he's a yid and the food is asur, but for him the food is chashuv. He's eating it, so it's not despicable for him. So therefore over here, when he makes that condition, the eating of these foods is included in the term achila that he said in the condition of his neder. But over here, stam, when a person comes along and makes a neder that he's not going to eat, miyach. What is there to show us that for this person, food that's not kosher is chashuv in the term achila, that it would be included in his shvuah? So therefore, from this case, there's no raya. So now going back and exploring more in general this whole concept of Isser Kailo. So as the Gemara brought before, it's a machlokes whether we say this concept of Isser Kailo or not. So the Gemara will explain the machlokes. So Rav said, my time in the man is like Isser Kailo. What is the reason for the opinion that says that even though something is asur already, but if now you add a second Isser, and it's Kailo. So again, Kailo means it's Kailo other things more. And then it takes effect because midi dehave a iser meisif. We compare this to what's called iser meisif. What's the concept of iser meisif? So Rashi explains. In the case of iser meisif, you're adding a new iser into this piece of food that's asur. You're not adding another item or another food to the iser. You're adding in this food itself an additional iser. The example Rashi brings is if you have chaylev. So chaylev is asur. Right from the creation, it's asur. Now, if this chaylev is from a carbon, so even though it's asur, but the chaylev, the fats, is still burnt on the mizbeach, so it could still be permitted for something. What happens now if this chaylev becomes nicer? It's after the time when you're allowed to burn it. Now, there's something that's added in this piece of chaylev. You can't burn it on the mizbeach anymore. So because there's an additional isser on this piece of chaylev itself, when you eat this chaylev, the isser of chaylev and the isser of nicer will apply. That's when you're meisif in the same piece. So according to the Mandamar that says that Issa Kailul will also take effect, he holds that even in a case where there's nothing that's being added in this piece, like the example that we were speaking about before, a nevela and then it's Yom Kippur. So there's no additional Issa that's being added to this piece of nevela. Kailul means you're just including more food, all foods to be asur. So just like when you're adding on this particular piece of food, the second Issa could take effect, this Mandama holds, even when you're not adding this piece of food, but you're adding from other things, that the Issa is being expanded to other things, it takes effect as well. But Uman the Potar, the one that says that Issa Kail does not take effect, and therefore you're Potar for the second Issa, and that's Rab Shimon, as mentioned before, the Leslie. Ki Omar, he doesn't hold to this, because Ki Omar Issa Meisiv B'chada Chaticha. Issa Meisiv, when you're adding a new Issa in this piece, then the second Issa takes effect. But B'shtei Chatichais Lo Yamrinan. But if it's two different pieces, meaning the Issa Kail, that you're only adding another piece to the Issa, you're expanding the Issa to another piece, but in this Issa nothing's being added, here it cannot take effect, since regarding this piece itself, there's nothing new being added with the second Issa. Rava said, Laman the Isle Issa Kailul, So the one that does hold of this concept of Issa Kailol, Amar Shvuah Shaloi Eichel Teinim. A person made a Shvuah not to eat figs. V'chazav Amar Shvuah Shaloi Eichel Teinim ve'anovim. And then he made a Shvuah where he said that he's not going to eat figs and grapes. So over here, it's Kailol. He's including now grapes as well. So Migad Chayal Novim, since it took effect on the grapes, Chayal Nami at Teinim. So the second Shvuah takes effect on the Teinim. So even though usually when you make a second Shvuah, it does not take effect because it's already Aser, because you included the grapes here, so it will take effect. Yeah, this is a regular case of Issa Kailol. Now, Taisus over here does say that when the Gemara says he made the second Shvuah of Teinim and Anovim, he didn't specify Teinim and Anovim, because if he did, such a Shvuah cannot take effect for the reason that the Gemara said in Amar Aleph. Once the Teinim are already Aser for him from the first Shvuah, this is the kind of Shvuah that's not Behain V'lav. He can't make the Shvuah to eat these figs. He can only make a Shvuah not to eat them. So therefore Taisa says the case is that the second Shvuah he didn't specify. He made a Shvuah that he's not going to eat, which includes figs and grapes as well, or other things as well. That's what the Gemara means. Okay, but the Gemara asks on this Pshita. The point that Rava is saying is obvious. What's the Chiddush here? According to this Mandama, the second Shvuah includes more things of the Isser, so it takes effect. Says the Gemara, the Chiddush is Ma'adeteime Isser Abo Me'elav Amrinon. I would think to say, when do I say the concept of Isser Kailol? When the second Isser takes effect on its own. And that's the example that we were talking about before on Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur comes, the second Isser is coming on its own. So as I mentioned, when we learned this before, that the Mefarshim say that there, the second Isser, because it's coming on its own, it's a stronger Isser. So there, the second Isser will take effect if it's Kailol more. But it is where the person himself is imposing this Issa through a Shavuah, lo yamrinon, in such a case, with the second Shavuah, that he added more things to be included, I would not say that it takes effect, kamash malon. Therefore, Rav is saying that according to this man da'ama, the concept of Issa Kailol applies regarding a Shavuah as well. Okay, the emphasis at this point, the Gemara is saying here, the Gemara said already before, according to Rabbi Yechanan, when Rabbi Yechanan said this pshat in the Mishnah regarding Issa Kailol. So Rav here is basically saying the same point. But Mefarshim say, or maybe is it in Taisus over here? Or the Mefarshim say, the Shainim say that Rava is saying that this is the Psak Din L'Kul Alma. Nobody argues about this. Rabbi Yechanan said that that's the Mishnah before, but Rava is saying this is L'Kul Alma. So because of this, the Gemara has now a question. So Rava, the son of Rabba, asks on Rava. It says in the Mishnah in Masechta Krises, Yesh Oichel Achila Achas. There's a case where a person eats one time, but v'chayiv aleh arba chatois, he's chayiv to bring 4 karbonis chatos and v'asham echad, and 1 asham. And ve'elohein, these are the isurim that he's doing, that'll be chayiv all these karbonis. Tamei, a person that's tamei, sha'achal chaylev, he eats forbidden fats, v'hu naisar, and this chaylev is also naisar. Me'ena mugdashin, and it's also mugdashin, it's Hagdish, right? And B'Yom Kippurim. And this is on Yom Kippur.
Mugdashin is one thing?
Yeah. Nu Naisa Mina Mugdashin, correct. Yeah, okay, sorry. So V'hu Naisa Mina Mugdashin, this is Naisa from Hagdish, and it's on Yom Kippur. Okay, so over here, the person will be chayiv 4 karbonis chatos and 1 carbon asham. So let's see, how does this work? So he's chayiv for eating chaylev, right? That's the first one. And then he's also chayiv for Naisar. And then he's chayiv for Yom Kippur, right? For the fact that he's eating on Yom Kippur. Second.
And he's a Tomei.
And he's also Tomei, correct. And he's also Tomei, but for the Tomei, he's chayiv, he's chayiv for the Tomei. And he's also chayiv for Me'ila. That's the carbon asham. For the carbon asham, when one is moil from hektish, there you chayiv the carbon asham. Okay, so now the way all these yisurim can take effect on this one piece that he's eating, even though once it's aser, a second isser usually cannot take effect, because either you could apply the concept of isser kailol here, or you apply the concept of isser maisiv. So let's start with chaylev. First, Rashi explains this. When it's chaylev, so it's also right away for chaylev, okay, right when it's created animal. But then when it becomes naisar, there's an additional isser that's added to this, because now in this piece, that's isser maisiv. In this piece itself, it becomes aser also to burn it on the mizbeach because it's naisar, right? And then the fact that it's mukdashin, so hektish is going to be a Issa Kailo. Because it's, again, Noisim and Amikdosha, now that's one thing, right? But the fact that it's Yom Kippur, right? The fact that it's Yom Kippur, so that's Moisif, that's not Moisif, that's Kailo. The fact that it's Yom Kippur is Kailo all foods, that it's going to be Yasser. And then also the fact that it's Tomei, that's also Kailo, because now that it's Tomei, or this person is Tomei, so he may not eat not only this piece of meat over here, but he may not eat any kachim. Right? I think that's what it is, right? If the person is Tomei, so then it's Kailul more, that he may not eat anything from the kachim. Second, see if I can find it over here in the Lashon Rashi. Okay, I think that's the pshat here. Okay, and then besides that, there's also the Isser of Me'ila, which is Chal over here, that's Kailul any kind of kachim, and then he has to bring a carbon Asham Me'ilas for that. Okay, now Rav Meir says, Afim Hoysa Shabbos. If it was Shabbos, then he'll be chayev for another carbon, or a fifth carbon chatas. And v'hitziyai, while he was eating it, he walked out with it from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, he'll be chayev another carbon. Amrullah, so they said to Rav Meir, no, this doesn't belong here in what we're talking about. Einem and Hashem. This is not part of the act of the Isra that the person is doing, that we're saying that for this one act, he'll be chayev 4 times chatas and 1 time carbon asham. Because it's not the eating, it's carrying, it's a different thing. Okay, so till here is what the Mishnah says. So the Gemara asks, if what Rav said is true, that by a Shavuos, which is a Isra that a person takes upon himself, but nevertheless, we still say the concept of Issa Kailo, that since he's including more, the Issa will take effect. So there, if so, Mishkachas Lachamish. You could say that there's a 5th carbon chatas to bring here. A person says that he's not going to eat dates and this fats as well. So since he's including this shvuah, not only the fats but also dates, so so this shvuah will take effect regarding these forbidden fats. So why didn't the Mishnah say that a person could eat 1 time and it'll be chayiv to bring yet another carbon chatas, a 5th carbon chatas for a shvuah that he makes? So the Gemara answers. The Gemara here is going to give a number of tirutzim. First answer is kikatani. This Mishnah is only specifying those isurim that take effect on their own, and they take effect in a way of meisef or kailol, to say that it'll be high 4 karbanos chatas and 1 karban asham. But isra ba me'atzma, isra that the person takes upon himself, lekatani. That's not a category that this Mishnah is including at all. Fragt the Gemara, how could you say that? V'harei hektish that is, but the fact that it's hektish, and he's moiled in this hektish, and that's being included over here, to say that he has to bring a carbon asham for this. Answers the Gemara, that's not something that the person was makdish. Right? So again, the Gemara's question is, he was makdish, so how are we including this? So the Gemara says, b'bchor. It's a b'chor that is kaddish merechem, when it's born it's kaddish. B'kdushasa merechem. Or we can say, kikatani. Now the answer, it's only mentioning those yisurim midi the lesle she'ela, kind of isser that you cannot undo this isser. So all the yisurim a person can't undo here. Shavuos, the isle she'ela, but the case of a shavuos, which the person is able to be shoyel on his nether and take it off, so like a tani, that's a kind of isser that this Mishnah does not mention. So again, the Gemara clarifies and asks, harek hektish, but hektish is also only through him being makdishit, then you could be shoyel, you could undo this hektish. Answers the Gemara, haik mina b'b'chor. But we said it's talking about a b'chor that is Kodesh Merechem. You cannot undo that Kodusha. A third answer, kikatani carbon kavua. This Mishnah is only mentioning 4 karbanas chatos, which is a set carbon for everybody the same, rich or poor. Carbon oil of leikatani. But a carbon for a shvuah, if a person breaks his shvuah and he has to bring a carbon, what kind of a carbon do you bring for that? A carbon oil of which is different for a rich and poor person. So that's not included as a 5th carbon chatos. But one of the cases of the carbon chatas is a person that's tamei, that eats from the carbon oil too. And this is also by a person that's tamei that eats from kachim. It's a carbon oil as we learned already in the first perek of the Masechta. So why is it being included here? Answers the Gemara, the case of this Mishnah is not a case of a regular Yid that eats from a carbon when he's Tameh. It's speaking about Benasi. A Nasi, that's Tameh, that eats from this carbon, brings a regular carbon Chatos. Rabbi Eliezer, it follows Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, the Omar, Nasi Mevi Sa'ir. That a Nasi, he always brings, for a carbon Chatos, he brings a goat, a Zachar. Usually by Yidden, by a carbon, they don't bring a Sa'ir. A Nasi brings a Sa'ir. And this Sa'ir that the Nasi brings, this is specifically regarding the Tumah of eating when one is Tameh, he brings a regular carbon. A regular carbon, a Sa'ir. Okay, so therefore, this is it being included there as a regular carbon Chatas. But even according to Rabbi Eliezer, regarding a Shavuot, when even a Nasi that breaks a Shavuot does not bring a regular carbon Chatas. He brings a carbon oil v'yaydet. Because by the Shavuot, it's not an Aveda where B'mezid is a Issa Kodesh. This Chiddush over here regarding a Nasi is that he brings a regular carbon Chatos, even by the Tomeh, is only if it's a Kodesh. But over here, by Shavuot, he brings a carbon oil v'yaydet. So therefore, the carbon oil v'yaydet of the Shavuot is not something that was included in this Mishnah. Another answer, Rav Ashi says, Kikatoni midi de chayla kishir Shavuot. Kishir, that is. The Mishnah here is only mentioning those Yisurim that takes effect, and the Isur is a certain shear, amount of a kazayis. Shavuot the chayla apachas mekashir, but a Shavuot that takes effect for less than the shear, like a tani. So that's not mentioned over here in the Mishnah. Fragt the Gemara about hektish. By hektish, when one is moil and hektish, the me'ilah of hektish is even less than a kazayis, and it's mentioned here as one of the isurim, one of the karbanis in this Mishnah. That's the Gemara about habina shava pruta. Even if you don't need a kazayis, but there is a certain amount to be moil. It has to be a shava pruta. Ravashi me'avire Omer Rav Zeire. Another answer. Ravashi me'avire says in the name of Rav Zeire, ki katani zedaynai karis. It's only mentioning those Averis which b'mezid you'd be chayiv karis. Zedaynai lav. The case of a shvuah. If a person is over on his shvuah b'mezid, it's only a lav, and there's no karis for this, like katani. That is not mentioned. Fragt the Gemara, but v'harei asham, the zedaynai lav. But the case of the asham, when a person is moil and hektish, and he brings the asham for being moil. So if one is moil b'mezid, there's no karis. It's a lav. It's actually machlokes if one is moil and hektish, if one is chayiv only malchus, or misibedei shamayim, which is learned from Truma, but not karis. If a katani, and the Mishnah does mention the case of me'ilah, even though it's not karis. Answers the Gemara, b'chatas kamdinon. Regarding the 4 cases of chatas that I mentioned here, it's only mentioning the 4 chatois that b'mezid is kares. The me'ilah that it mentions, even though b'mezid there's no kares, but that me'ilah is not in the category of chatas. That me'ilah is asham. Another answer the Gemara says, the final answer in this Mishnah, Ravina explains, ki katoni midi de chayel amidi de bar achila. Who? When does the Mishnah say these cases that you could be chayev 4 karbanis and then another asham? It's only regarding those kind of yisurim that take effect on something that is edible. But shvuah the chayla amidi the lav barachilahu loikatani. But a shvuah is a different kind of a isser. It's not related to food specifically. It's an isser that takes effect on food and takes effect on other kinds of things. So that's not included there in this Mishnah. The Mishnah is talking only about isurim related specifically to food. In fact, the Gemara, how could you say that? V'harei hektish. But one of the Yisurim is the Me'ilah of hektish, the Chayal Nami Ha'etzim Ba'avonim. And when one is maktish, it could be even on a piece of wood or a rock. And says the Gemara, so that's not the point. Elo, the pshat is a little different. Ki katani, when the Mishnah here says these 4 cases, it's only midi, or without the word midi. The Chayal, a midi, the Isba Mashosha. It's a kind of Isser that takes effect only on something which is of substance. Has to be some object where the Isser is in effect in it. But Shavuah, what's unique about the Isser of a Shavuah is the Chayla Amidi de Les Mashosha. A person makes a Shavuah, the Isser of the Shavuah is not on the Cheftzeh, it's not on the object. The Isser is on the person, that I will not do this and this. And therefore it takes effect even regarding an action in relation to something where there's nothing tangible, there's nothing concrete here. Kogain, She'isham v'shalai yisham. A person swears, I will sleep or I will not sleep. So therefore this is a kind of Isser that's not related to something tangible. And therefore, like a Tani, that's not a category that this Mishnah is mentioning.